I find that the number one tactic of Satan and demons is isolation. It's not porn, it's not moral issues, it's isolation. It's not having bloodstained allies in your life. In November 2013, I just finished a seminar at the church where I was pastoring, and an elder met me down in the lobby, took me into my office, and basically read to me that my leadership, my autocratic leadership, was causing problems in the church, and I was being put on a forced 6-month sabbatical. I went into deep depression. I was angry and frustrated. I had not been consulted, and I felt like I was being betrayed. And it was during that time that I went through what I would call the dark night of the soul for my life, as I struggled with that, and I felt very, very alone. And I remember this one story, this one incident in the famous movie Forrest Gump that kind of picks up what was a part of the new life that I was going to develop through this difficult time. If you remember, if you saw the movie, you remember this one part where after he had been with his beloved Jenny, idyllic night the night before, they had been together for, it seemed like a few months in the movie. She just suddenly up and leaves that night, and Forrest is just shocked. He's crestfallen. He's depressed. And he goes out on the patio, and he has his Bubba Gump hat on and his Nike shoes. The monologue in the movie, it says, "For no particular reason, I just began to run." And so he ran and he ran. If you remember in the movie, he ran across the United States, I think 4 or 5 times running. And he kept saying this phrase, "for no particular reason." And one morning for me, for no particular reason, I got up and I put on some hiking boots and a hat, and I started walking. And so walking and walking and walking every day for the next 3 years, miles and miles, processing what was going on in my life, the sense of failure, the sense of shame with the church that I had pastored. And I had built that church from a living room group of about 10 people to a church of the into the thousands. And so here I was being sort of pushed aside by the elders. And one day, after taking one of my long walks, I came back, and there at the fire pit was a group of men. And that group of men began to restore my heart. This group of men would come out almost every day, and we would meet around that fire. They kind of knew when I was coming back from one of my long, long walks, and we began to talk and to share and to cry together. And it was in that vulnerability in my life that God began to give me other men who found that through the vulnerability that I was going through, they were willing to be vulnerable with me about things that had happened even in their past. And so habit number 3 is developing bloodstained allies. Let me give you my definition of what I mean by the term that I'm using, bloodstained allies. Bloodstained allies are people who unconditionally accept you and absolutely won't cut and run when life gets hard. All of us need, but few of us have, people in our lives with whom we can be vulnerable and authentic. Those are the people who will build breakthrough courage into us in the darkest of time. And so even before that, all the years of life, I don't think I'd ever had true bloodstained allies. I had friends, but this is different. This is deeper than just friends. This is more of what we might call like covenantal friendship or sanctified friendship at a whole different level. These were men that not only had my back, but they also were vulnerable about their lives. They were bloodstained. They were broken. They had gone through stuff, and they were willing to be authentic about it. And so men and women, you need bloodstained allies in your life. You need some people that you can relate to, that you can share your heart with, and that you trust them and they trust you. So in all my counseling and all the different relationships that are with people who are going through struggles in their marriage or their singleness or whatever, I find that the number one tactic of Satan and demons is isolation. It's not porn. It's not moral issues. It's isolation. It's not having bloodstained allies in your life. I'll tell you, every suicide is a person desperate for bloodstained allies. Every extramarital affair, every unfaithful act is with men and women who do not have bloodstained allies in your life. And so demons and Satan are always lying to us that, hey, man, if you're open and you're vulnerable about this or that in your life, people are going to reject you, they're going to belittle you, and they're going to leave you in the dust. And I'm telling you, the opposite is true with the right kind of people. That the more you're vulnerable and the more you're open with the right kind of people, trust is built. Everybody's looking for bloodstained allies. Everybody needs bloodstained allies. Even Jesus needed bloodstained allies. So Jesus, right when he started his public ministry, picked 12 men. And it was those 12 men that became his team. So here's the Son of God who's going to go to the cross and die for the sins of the world, who's going to be ripped apart for us that we might be saved from hell and go to heaven to have a personal, vital, dynamic relationship with God through Jesus. Jesus needed bloodstained allies. Jesus not only had the 12 that were part of his team, he had a deeper group of 3 men, Peter, James, and John, that were his bloodstained allies. Same with David. The story of David is monumental. It's probably one of the most powerful stories of bloodstained allies. Here's David, who is at the top of his game. He's the most famous leader in all of Israel. And then Saul turns on him. He runs for his life. All of the army that he's led in battle after battle to victory with the Philistines has now a most wanted list on David. They're after him. That sense of betrayal must have been huge in David's life, that even the army that he had led, those soldiers under Saul are now turned to take out David. And he ends up in this cave in 1 Samuel 22. It's called the Cave of Adullam. And there 400 men gathered to him. And listen to the description of the kind of men that gathered around David. Everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented gathered to him. I mean, that's not an army, that's a gang. And that was like this like group of people that are kind of running from the law, not sure what to do with their life. And, hey, let's go follow David. Well, I think the reason they followed David is they could relate to what he was going through in his life. Men and women, that's what bloodstained allies are. These are not people who are trying to be cool or trying to be special. These are people who realize that you're going through stuff, the same stuff that they go through. There's a vulnerability about that. There's an authenticity that comes from that. And in the case of David, these men and women became mighty men of God. They brought their families in. And one battle after another, all through 1st and 2nd Samuel, you see them rising up because of the authenticity of David. And then also David was raised up because of the authenticity of his men. A study at the University of Virginia a few years back is very interesting. And what they did is they took mountain climbers and they put a mountain climber in an interview with the researcher alone. They showed him or her the summit that they were going to attempt to get to the top of. And they asked the mountain climber, how long will it take you to summit this particular mountain? And they gave them a time, a guess of how long it would take them. And then they took 2 mountain climbers who were going to climb and summit the mountain together, and they asked them the same question. And it was amazing that 70% of the time, those who were in groups of 2 gave a time that was 50% faster than those who are alone being asked the same question. The point being that when we have bloodstained allies, when we have team around us, we're braver, we're more courageous. And my thesis is that bloodstained allies give you breakthrough courage. And we all need those bloodstained allies in our life. And I wanted to conclude this habit with what I think are 4 essential qualities of a bloodstained ally. Quality number 1 is vulnerable. They have to be someone who's willing to be vulnerable about their own life. They're not there just to listen to you so they can go, wow, man, you're really a messed up dude. I can't really believe that you struggle with that. Man, let me tell you like 3 years ago how I got over that. That's not a bloodstained allies. We don't need that kind of person in our life. There's plenty of that. But this is someone who understands what you're going through, and they're willing to also share what they're going through. So there's a vulnerability. Quality number 2, empathy. This is someone who not only is willing to be vulnerable about similar struggles, but they also have empathy and love for you because you're going through things that they can relate to also. Thirdly, power. This is a person of power. In other words, this is someone who understands God's power. I mean, you don't need a relationship with someone who says, oh, yeah, that's the worst, man. This is a hopeless cause. No, you need someone who believes in the power of God and will pray with you and believe that God can bring a miracle. And then quality number 4 would be endurance. They're going to hang in there. They're not going to cut and run when things get hard, but they're going to have your 6. They're going to have your back. This habit, this whole idea, habit number 3 of bloodstained allies, is huge in having breakthrough courage. So I challenge you, if you don't have any friends or any deep bloodstained allies in your life right now, begin to pray and ask God for people who fit those qualities, because they're out there. God wants you to have them. His son Jesus had them. David had them. All of us need them.